All right, so hopefully everyone is here for selecting the right technology. If not, I hate to break it to you, but you are at the wrong workshop. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump right in to what we're going to be covering today. So first of all, we're going to look at, do you really need it? We're going to talk about creating a strategy, how to pick one, and then evaluating the technology that you find. So that's what you should be expected to hear during this session. All right, so a big part of selecting technology is making sure that you actually need that new technology. And for the purpose of this discussion, what is technology? So this is the application of scientific knowledge to the practical aims of human life, or as it is sometimes phrased, to the change and manipulation of the human environment. Now, this can be anything from apps, programs, software. There's a lot that comes under the heading of technology, or even like a new computer or something else like that. So as you're getting started in this process, I'm going to recommend a few different things. Now, one of those is, as you get started, use paper. Paper and pen is great. You can start thinking about what are you actually needing. And it's highly recommended. There have been studies that have proven that if you start with just looking on the device and instead of making the list, you tend to start searching for things. And then you go down this rabbit hole, and then at the end of it, you don't even remember what you're looking for in the first place. So when you're brainstorming, it's really good practice to just grab a pencil and paper and just start think about what kind of things do you need. And a good way to look at that is look at your pain points. So what things are you struggling with? Are there time sinks, money drains? So this is anything that could be a problem. And this could be financial, productivity, something in the process that's just not working for you, or maybe if you're just not receiving the support. So just kind of think of what is really jamming up your process or your day, or what's just not working with what. And then you're going to do an evaluation of your map. So your map is pretty much the process, how your process currently works, or how your day currently goes. So if you're thinking about getting ready to teach a class, or you're thinking about going into your workflow for a project at work, kind of start writing down a little bit of what your actual map is for that process or for the day. So this can give you a really good idea of exactly how much time and energy you're spending on different parts of the process. Now, as you're creating your map, you're going to want to look too at what's working. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You want to make sure that you are keeping track of what's going right, because you don't want to get rid of something that's actually working for you. So kind of keep the groove going for things that are going well, and just evaluate and find those pain points are for what's not working for your system. So once you've started kind of thinking about what you actually need, you want to start creating a strategy then for when you're searching or when you're finding technology. So I went with the change management strategy, so the 7 R's. Now, if you are familiar with those classic 7 R's, I did switch out who raised the charge for research. As a librarian, I kind of got to throw research in there somewhere. All right. Oh, yeah, time usage definitely is important. All right, so we're going to look at these 7 R's. We have, what's the reason for the change? Now, frequently this could be maybe you're overwhelmed, things just aren't working. You need to be able to free up that time from repetitive tasks. You know, as Tony just mentioned, the time usage. So you want to kind of think of, is there a reason for the change? You know, you don't want to just do this for the fun of it. You also want to think of, what is the expected return? So what are you planning to get back out of this? Could it be time, money, feedback from students? So just kind of think of what are you expecting to get back from this process. You also want to look at what are the risks. So sometimes you have some time loss. This may not work. Something might have a virus. You know, there's different varieties of risk as far as sometimes privacy issue or things like that. So for instance, with certain software, maybe you could miss a question if you're not looking at that software, if you're using something for asking questions. So there's all kinds of risks that are possible. So you want to kind of think with that technology, you're looking at what could be risk for there. You also want to look at what resources, looking bad is a big one. I hate when I'm doing technology sessions and then all of a sudden everyone just picks. It's like, great, I'm recommending something and it's not. Yeah, so what resources are involved? So this can be time, money, materials, subscription costs, operating system, hardware, if you need to buy a new computer to order to run a program. You also want to look at free versus pay, because sometimes the pay stuff, you have to pay some money, but it could expedite some things, whereas the free stuff might involve more time or stuff. So think about what's going to be involved on the back end and what you're going to need to provide in order to make this technology work for your system. So I don't know if any of you guys know XKCD, but they have a nice little graph saying, is it worth the time? And so this is a good one to look at to kind of think of how often are you doing the task. So if you just do the task once a year, but you're spending weeks and weeks trying to fix this problem for time efficiency, it may not be actually worth that time that you're spending on it. So think about how much of that time you're giving up to fix the problem. You also want to look at who is responsible in the end for putting this together. And the question, or the answer is probably going to be, you're going to be responsible for it. Now, you might be able to dictate this onto somebody else, but generally you're going to have to be implementing everything and doing all the preparing, testing, and everything else. You also want to think about what is the relationship to the other changes or existing resources. So would this interfere or change the workflow with some of the existing resources that you already are using? So is it going to break some of that stuff that's just already working? So is there overlap with something else? Do you really need to add this new technology, or is it going to be kind of equal to something you're already using? And then, of course, you do need to look into researching things a little bit. So this is going to include like content, security, and privacy. So content, there's a lot of things you need to think about, like what's included. So are there features and functions that you really like about it? Is it immediately evident how it can be useful? So do you know right up front exactly what you're going to do with it? You also have to think about the design of the product. So sometimes you might have an amazing program that you found or website, but the design is just terrible and it's not really intuitive and hard to use. How much background knowledge do you have to know for this information? Or how hard is it to get into? Are you going to have something you're sharing with your students which requires them to do a lot of work up front and they just can't get into it? Analytics. Analytics is big across the university. So does it have something you can track as far as how things are doing with it? And how much can you customize? And I really have to emphasize security and privacy. So I think this is something we don't always look at as much as we should, but you want to think about what's their data or privacy policy. So who would have access to this information that you're sharing? How long are they retaining your information? And how much are they updating security fixes and anything else like that? So this is really important because if we're making students work with technology, we need to make sure that we're protecting them and that we're only going to be suggesting things that we consider safe for them. We don't want to be suggesting things that might put them at risk or make their information vulnerable. All right, so after we've gone through all of that process, the next step is you actually have to pick one. Now, and I always mention the one part is important. You don't want to fall into the trap of trying to do a bunch of new programs all at once. You just want to start with one. That way you know you have the time and energy to dedicate to it. Speaking of time, you want to make sure you're setting a time limit. So this is going to say, how much time are you going to spend on this to decide if it's useful or if it does or doesn't fit your needs? Now, you actually want to set this ahead of time and add it to your calendar or write it down somewhere so that you remember to revisit this. And that way you don't just have where it's endlessly stretching on and you're never coming back and thinking, is this actually working for me? Look back at your list. How many of your needs does that one that you selected meet? Is it actually going to fill what you're looking for, or did you just go ahead and select something that may not actually work for what you want? You also want to set up limits up front for things like costs. So how much you're going to spend on it, how much time you're going to put in for training, and then anything else like that. All right. So I've pulled these up just to kind of show you guys a few ones that either I heard about recently or that I've used before that might work for some of your needs. And again, it's always good to think about what your needs are first before diving into the technology, but sometimes you might see something and say, oh, that meets some need that I have. So Floop EDU has where you can set up assignments, and then students will upload images or PDFs. So in this case, I said, put your favorite animal, and it was a dragon. And then you can add comments. So you can add comments and give feedback to them, so that way students can go ahead and work within that. So limitation is this only works, of course, then for images or PDFs. But if you are having where you want students to be able to get easy input back, this is an option. IRAD has where you can capture things and do really quick tutorials. So I would just do that, and I can start a desktop capture, and it just really quickly makes a tutorial over whatever I'm wanting to do. And I probably should cancel that. Alpha, so this is not necessarily a program. This is kind of an information bank. If you want to, it has all kinds of information, especially in the sciences, but it also has, they've added a lot with history. They actually have some interesting things with weather, so you can look up the weather and a location on a specific date. So it's kind of a nice one that I like to highlight as something a little bit different. Nearpod is another option, and so this offers something very similar to PowerPoint, so you can create slides and do all kinds of things, or you can actually import PowerPoint slides, and then you can create little collaborate sessions. So if you want to, you can do polling, you can have little like exercises where they have to kind of race each other with the answers, and you can have it all built into one place. EDU Creations lets you take an iPad and kind of do screen sharing and narration of that. Oh yeah, print friendly. Yes, good clean PDFs is nice. Quizlet has where you can create little flashcards for students, so you can put those together. And then there's some good ones for, I don't know if any of you guys have ever worked with infographics. So both Visme and Easily have where they can create really nice infographics. Photopea is a good one if you kind of want to use a free image editor. So it's about the equivalent of a cheap, Photoshop. Yeah, Photopea is pretty fun. And then Classroom Queue is a way to kind of stay interactive. So pretty much it just gives students a way to raise their hand, ask a question, so you can keep an eye on how things are going. This is especially useful if you're doing like really large classes or something and you're worried about questions getting lost. So this will actually show all the questions coming in the order they appear. All right. Prusol, Canva. Yeah, Canva has some really nice ones. Yeah, so there's a lot of different softwares out there. There's a lot of really great resources. And of course, we could also dedicate an entire session just on how to finding those technology. So my general trick that I do, or tips that I would recommend when you're starting to search for your technology, is after you've gone through that whole process that I described earlier, you want to start writing down keywords. So what things are you looking for it to do? Is it looking for feedback or collaboration? Is it looking for organization? And then search for some of those terms combined with educational technology or even just software or apps. So that can really help you get started with locating and kind of finding some of those different options. The other thing too is, so once you have that list and you kind of know what you're going to be looking for, that's when you can then also go to your colleagues and say, hey, I'm looking for something that meets these criteria. Can you help me find a program? Is there something you'd recommend? The nice thing is with academia, we're not working in a vacuum, right? We're able to help each other. We're able to ask questions. We don't have to recreate the wheel. And most of the time, people are more than happy to recommend some kind of program that they've worked with that might work for you. So never be afraid. Just make sure that you are going and taking your list with you. All right. Now, you also want to revisit your existing technology. So, going back to that idea of how many apps you have on your phone, a lot of times there are things that you've already heard about, have used before, that you can revisit to see if there's any new ways you can utilize them differently. They might meet your current needs and you just don't realize it. So for example, I flipped a class and I needed to record videos, but the computer that had Captivate on it wasn't working. So we just used PowerPoint to record it and capture the slides. So you can go ahead and kind of look and see, does your older technology work for something that maybe you didn't know it did in the first place? And that is one of the other things too, is as you're looking at the software, you also want to think about how much time you're suggesting, how much time you're investing in this and whether it'll be around. So I know a lot of times there are programs which are amazing and great and wonderful, but then they die off in a couple of months, or maybe they get bought out and then all of a sudden you're having to pay $100 a year for it. So you want to also think about that when you're looking at the technology, as far as how long is it going to stay around and kind of be working for you. All right. Now you also want to do the shiny object check. So this is making sure that you're not just going after that shiny new object because everyone's talking about it and it looks amazing. Christopher, that is a great point. Yes. No, I agree with you. There's so often, I get frustrated too, where we'll have some people saying, you have to use these 3 or 4 different citation management software programs, or you have to go ahead and have one person uses the iClicker, one person uses this other method, and you have 5 different things people are having to buy. So I think it would be nice if we had sometimes too, where we recommended, if you're doing X or Y, please keep it within these options. That's great feedback. So yes, if there was one organized method, we could rule the world. All right. Yeah, and so don't just go for that shiny object. Yeah, and that also goes with making sure, we're not doing things just for the sake of doing something fun with technology. So we have the purpose built for it. All right. And then you want to go back and, of course, consult your list again. So make sure, is it still on track with everything? So does it meet all of the requirements that we've gone through? Is it fitting your needs? Have you picked the one? Will it fit in with how much you're willing to pay? How much time you're willing to spend? So kind of just really make sure that you are reevaluating at every step of this. Just because, again, we hear so many things, and then you can go down these rabbit holes, and then the next thing you know, you have 5 new products that you're looking at, and none of them meet your original needs. All right. And then the last portion of this, and I apologize, I've been whipping through this a little faster than planned. But the last portion of this is you want to start evaluating then after you've started working with that product. So yes, make that list, check it twice, check it again. It's like with grocery shopping. You have the list, and then how much extra do you have, or how much from your list actually makes it into your shopping cart? Or do you be like me and sometimes you forget your list at home and then you don't even know what you're checking? So when you're evaluating it, you want to make sure you set a process and timeline for when you're piloting your experiments. So this is going to be, including steps for feedback, and for different success. So when are you expecting things to be at a point where you're going to have something working for you? Yeah, customer support definitely is really big. Especially making sure that, hey, I think I might have broken something. Can you fix that for me? Not that I've ever done that. Yes. So you want to have expectations up front with how long, again, you're going to spend on this, and then what process you want to use for evaluating it. And you do want to get feedback. So if you are implementing something that will be used with other people, please make sure that you are asking them what their experience with this is. Going back to Christopher's thing, is it just going to be another thing where they're like, oh, we're just frustrated because we have to learn something new? Is it something joy? Is it something that just didn't work for them? So kind of think about what process and timeline you want for things. And that can also be where you can communicate sometimes, I think, within a department at least, and try to be consistent within at least the department, which is the minimum that we can do, I think. All right. Now, the other thing too is you don't have to feel like just because you've downloaded it and you've been spending time on it, that you can't just stop using something. So if you can see something is not working for you, if people are getting frustrated, if it's just not going how it should be, just stop. You can kill it off real time. You don't have to wait until that process is over. You don't have to go ahead and you know, sunk cost, it's the idea of sunk cost facility, or not facility. I cannot think of the word. I'm sure I'll think of it later after the thing. Thank you. Sunk cost fallacy, which is the idea that, oh, I've invested so much time, effort, and money into this that I have to keep going. No, don't do it. There's other things out there. Stop, kill it, find something else. So make sure that you don't feel like you have to keep going with something just because you started the semester with it. All right. And remember too, you have this, right? You guys are interested in learning how to do this. I mean, you're all showed up for the workshop, so that's something, right? So you want to look at how you're reacting to new technology, creating that strategy to examine your needs, creating that testing process, and then you'll be ready when you hear about the newest tech resource, or you can start proactively looking for what kind of technology might fit those needs that you uncovered. Now, you do want to remember, and I think it was meant, yeah, the easy button. Life needs a big easy button, right? That would be nice. Now, you do want to remember, and I think I was mentioned earlier too in the session by one of you. I'm sorry I didn't remember the name. Just because, you know, technology is there to facilitate learning in the classroom, right? It's supposed to be a tool. So you're using the technology, you should not have the technology use you, right? Make sure that you're using it purposefully. And I found this great quote. It says, students are often the guinea pigs in IT-enabled classes as faculty test out whether the latest innovations actually help learning. Some faculty, in the effort to use the latest buzzword or receive the next biggest grant, are testing technology simply for the sake of technology, rather than using technology as a tool for learning, such as paper and pencils. When people focus too much on technology, they lose sight of the true purpose of technology, which is to facilitate learning in the classroom. So make sure that you go back to your lists and you put one of those things as to be facilitating, because you want this to be helping you in some way. And again, making sure that it's something that you're purposefully doing as you're going through and selecting technology and selecting what kind of things you're looking for. So make sure that you're kind of thinking back and going back to, again, what Christopher mentioned, that we're not just throwing technology in there because it's shiny and new, but we're having something that students will be helped because of this, or that we will be helped. Because, you know, we do want to look at technology in the classroom, but let's face it, we have a lot of things outside of the classroom we have to work on. So make sure that you are finding something that's going to be useful for you and that's going to really help you kind of make your life a little bit easier.